Sean, it's Wednesday, which means we are now officially a week into training camp. Thursday will be a week on the ice. Teams are in full swing. Preseason games are underway. We're less than 2 weeks away now from the start of the regular season, a triple header on October 10th, and I'm ready to fast forward to it.
You got to live in the moment, Dan. You got to be present. This is an awesome time. You're going to see players that you haven't seen before. It's a great time to see what's in the pipeline, who could be coming, and there's going to be some great stories that come out of the next 2 weeks. Players that make teams on PTOs or young players that perform better than expected. I love this time of year.
I love it more when the regular season starts.
That's you, Dan.
Well, you do too. And you love it even more when the playoffs start. Don't lie. You know you do. But you living in the moment. I appreciate that, living in the moment. Did you enjoy the games in Australia? Did you catch them? Did you watch the whole thing? Started at midnight here.
Yeah, because some of us have to work, Dan. So I did. I stayed up, watched the games, coordinated some coverage with our excellent team of Nick Kotstanika and Emily Benjamin, who had top-notch, high-end coverage throughout. If you haven't seen it, you should go back and look at it because it was fantastic. The games were great. The crowds were unbelievable. Sellout crowds both nights, knowledgeable. You know, there's a pretty good hockey presence in Australia. You wouldn't think that there would be, but there is. There's a pro league there. A couple of NHLers play there, rave about it. I thought they were great. And look, you talk about young kids and seeing things, you know, where kids are going to slot in and who might make teams. Logan Cooley was ridiculous.
That goal was insane. It might be the goal of the year. I mean, literally, it could be in the running as the season goes on for goal of the year. It was definitely worth the price. I mean, you say great, and it certainly was, and I thought they were. I was watching a little bit here and there. I didn't stay up to watch the whole thing, but certainly caught all the highlights, read all of our coverage. Agree with you, top-notch coverage by Nick Kotstanika and Emily Benjamin, but impactful too. And I think that's really the thing here, and that's the word that I want to use. It was impactful. I loved how in Nick's writing, he talked about how he counted in the first game all 32 NHL jerseys. All 32 teams were represented in the crowd by some person wearing that team's jersey or whatever it was, sweatshirt, whatever it might have been. That was really important. I think it shows that there is a hockey community there. It shows that there's an NHL interest there. And that's the key thing. Luc Robitaille referenced this with Elliot Friedman on Sportsnet. The key thing is not just going to these markets, but it's continuing to go to these markets. And David Proper from the NHL, who's involved, you know, who's in charge of the international, he talked about this as well. Like, you go there and you don't know what to expect, but when you come away with the experience you had, you have to capitalize on it. And that's going to be the key. They'll take time now to see the impact. Where was it financially and interest-wise, all of that stuff? They'll figure that out. But I have to believe, just based on what we saw, the crowds, the number of jerseys, the merchandise that was sold, which Nick also referenced in his story, I have to believe that this market now is on the radar. And more, well, it was on the radar already. It's more than just on the radar. It's a potential return market for the National Hockey League. And the build for this is you go in the preseason to see, will it work? And then if it really does, maybe you go back bring a couple of more teams. You test it out again. And then if it's still going, that's when you bring the regular season there. That's when you bring more business there. And I think that's going to be the impact we could see from the Australian market, because we have listeners to this podcast from Australia, and clearly we have readers on NHL.com. There is a clear hockey interest that I think has now been exposed to a broader audience, which is the impact of this whole thing.
Well, we're going to have more listeners, Dan, because you weren't up, because you were getting your beauty sleep, and that's why you're on NHL Network all the time, and I only get to do this podcast with no video. I was up. Huge ads for At the Rink on the scoreboard. So we're going to have more listeners for Australia. I welcome them all. I know we already have some. I heard from them on Twitter. Stephen White, who does the play-by-play for the Australian Pro League, he was pretty much an ambassador for all the North American media that went over there. I know he's a loyal listener, and a bunch of his colleagues. So that's going to be great. The other thing is the impact it makes on the youth there, right? Like, not only do they get to see the NHL so they can dream about being a part of it, but there's a legacy there. Anywhere we go, there's always a legacy project. And there was one here, right? Like both teams skated with the youth hockey players in Australia. One team skated with an indigenous team, which was awesome. The other team skated with the youth team from the O'Brien Ice House, which is where they practice. And you watch those videos that NHL Studios made, and the faces, the way their faces lit up in skating with these NHL players, like that's what makes all this happen. And we've been to some not traditional markets when we've gone abroad. I was lucky enough 10-11 years ago to go to Belfast when the Bruins played there, and everybody was like, why would you go to Belfast? And you look at the Belfast Giants and the success they've had since that trip, and I like to think that a little piece of that has to do with the Bruins trip there and really kind of turbocharging the interest in hockey, which was already strong in Belfast, but making it even stronger. They just built, or they're about to build, a new practice rink. Their numbers are bigger than they've ever been. Those are the things you look for. You're not only exposing the NHL game to people, but you're exposing the game of hockey to younger people, and you're leaving the infrastructure there for more. And I think that's really important as well.
Right. And now the people in Australia and the ice hockey community there have to pick it up and run with it. The NHL has to keep investing, or at least stay invested within that. And that will be happening as this goes on. But of course, it leads to the next question of where they're going to go next year. Where are you going to have? Where's it going to be? And that's the fun part. We'll get into that at some point down the road. It was impactful. I think the teams enjoyed it. Todd McClellan was asked, if you were to tell another NHL coach about this trip, what would you tell them? He'd say, listen, you got to deal with the travel. That is part of it. And it is a big hiccup, and it is a hard thing for these teams. But, in the short term, they can live through that. But he said it was a wonderful experience, an engaged fan base. You got to do things you thought you'd never be able to do. And the key thing, too, is they were in one market. Luc Robitaille also talked about this. When they went to China several years ago, and I went to China a couple of years ago with the Flames and the Bruins, it was multiple markets. So you didn't get, you got a little taste and then you left. For us, for when I was there, it was Shenzhen and then Beijing. When the Kings were there, it was Shanghai and Beijing. And you got a little taste, but then you left. They were in this market. They were in the same market in Melbourne for 8 days. So they really could immerse themselves there. And I think that was another key part of this as well. The overall experience is exactly, it might be more, Sean. It might be more than what the NHL thought it was getting, and it was getting into. And this was a long researched market. This was not something that they just chose. This was 5 years of research and understanding of interest and whatnot.
Yeah, no, for sure. And look, the travel is hard, but it was during the preseason. They have 2 weeks to recover. It's not like some of the ones we've done in the past. I remember the first one we ever did, the Kings and the Ducks went to London, and Brian Burke was the GM of the Ducks at the time. And I remember he wanted the league to hopscotch him back to Anaheim to try and deal with the time change on the way. So they landed in DC and they went to Annapolis and they had a bit of training camp, and then they kind of went west playing on the way back. And it did not turn out as well as Brian had hoped. And they were a little bit in the hole when they got back to Anaheim. So this is a little bit different. Look, the thing about it is if you're going to bring players to places like that, you need to make it worth their while. And I think they did. All those players got to do one of the coolest things ever. And I'm so envious because it's on my bucket list. They went to what basically was NFL championship Sunday in America. They went to the Aussie Rules football semifinals, and they saw a game in the Melbourne Cricket Ground with 97,000 people. It was a one-score game. The kid who won the game for Collingwood, American, Mason Cox, kicked the game-winning goal. They had all met him earlier in the year. He had taught them how to drop punt. Just fantastic. And all the players said, this is the sport. I've never seen this, and this is like hockey. This is what I want to do if I can't do hockey. So it was awesome.
Australia was a great experience, but we're back in North America now. So let's return to North America, where training camps are in full swing. We got a heck of an episode here. We got the Tkachuk brothers, not together, separate, but they answer questions about each other. Brady Tkachuk from the Ottawa Senators will be up first. Then we'll go to Matthew Tkachuk. So this is the Tkachuk at the rink episode. They are kind of the first family of hockey now. I mean, everybody wants to know what's up with Brady and Matthew Tkachuk. Everybody wants to follow the Tkachuk. So we got them both on this episode right here. But let's talk Ottawa Senators. Since Brady's going to be up first, Sean, let's talk a little Ottawa Senators. Look, this team has high hopes, big expectations. They're not the only team in the Atlantic Division like that hasn't been in the playoffs. Buffalo Sabres have that. Detroit Red Wings have that, right? And obviously Toronto and Florida and Boston, in Tampa, those teams have huge expectations too. It's really a grinder of a division. I'm not sold on the Ottawa Senators being a team that's going to make the playoffs this season. I'm not picking them to make the playoffs this season. I think they can be good. I think they are going to be a dangerous team. I think they're going to be a contender. But I don't look, the loss of DeBrincat, even though he didn't have a big year for them, it's big. Can Tarasenko make up for that? I don't know. Shane Pinto had a nice year for them. Not in camp, still unsigned. Love Brady Tkachuk. I like their defense. Thomas Chabot, Jake Sanderson, Artem Zub, Eric Brandstrom, and Jacob Chikrin. Is it big enough? You look at the size of the Vegas Golden Knights, how they win the Stanley Cup with a big defense, mobile, physical defense. Does Ottawa have that? I got a lot of questions, and including in net, Sean. Jonas Korpisalo came off a nice season last season. Columbus, LA. Is he a true number one? There's too many questions, I think, with Ottawa right now. And maybe I'm the downer on this team, but just kind of the way I feel. How do you feel?
Well, I think it's really interesting that you didn't mention any of this when you talked to Brady Tkachuk. None of your reservations, nothing. I wonder
you didn't
why.
either.
Well, that's because I don't have as many as you.
Okay.
And I have nothing left to say about the team because you said it all. You covered the whole team. You left me. There's no meat left on the bone.
They got a new owner.
The only thing I'll say is they got a new owner in Michael Andlauer, who just became the owner this week. And I thought his press conference was a tour de force. I loved when he said, he wanted to thank his kids for allowing him to spend his inheritance on his dream.
Yeah.
I think that was awesome. They brought in Cyril Leader again. They're going to try and revive that downtown arena project, and I think that would be huge if they could make that happen. I think it just adds to the optimism that's in Ottawa, but with optimism comes expectations, and that grace period is over now. I don't know who they are. I think they're going to be in it to the end. It's a really difficult division. I like some of the moves they've made. It would certainly help if they'd get Shane Pinto into camp. There's only 3 big restricted free agents left that are out of camp, and Pinto's one of them. I have optimism. I don't know if it's enough to get them in, but I think they're going to take another step. If it's a big enough step, we'll see.
Look, I have optimism in the Ottawa Senators. I think they're going to be a good team. I just don't know in that grinder division if they're going to be a playoff team, number one. But there's big optimism after Michael Andlauer's press conference and the expectations that they're going to have in Ottawa over the next decade or two. I mean, that's the big thing with the Ottawa Senators. The team itself is improving and it's growing. And maybe it does. Maybe they do take that next big step this season. It wouldn't shock the hockey world if they did. They are a good team. I'm not ready. I'm not sold on them. That's just my opinion. But the revitalization of downtown for an arena there, bringing the Senators down there, I think that's going to be huge for Ottawa and for hockey. And I mean, this is Canada's capital city. And you put an arena downtown. Listen, you and I both, I think, have the same feeling of Ottawa. When you're downtown, what a wonderful place. It is a beautiful city. It's a wonderful place. Now you throw an arena down there. I think will be a terrific investment in the downtown community there. Just not 100% sold on the Ottawa Senators for this season, but I am sold on Brady Tkachuk, and I do like Brady Tkachuk, Sean.
Well, I would hope so. He's a very likable guy. He might be the more likable of the two Tkachuks. They're each likable in their own way, but I think he's great, and he really sets the tone for that team. They kind of feed off his infectious enthusiasm and his fearlessness, and he's kind of the guy that lets the other team know, right, what they're going to be in for. And that's the thing that hasn't been there forever for Ottawa, is when you play the Ottawa Senators now, you're in it. You might walk away with the 2 points, but you're not giving half effort. You're in it. You're going to have to fight for everything you get, literally and figuratively. And that's a huge change. And that leads towards, what I think they're trying to grow as year builds upon year, and their young core becomes bigger, and they all become a part of this identity, and they have these common experiences. And then you're going to see the big rivalries start to mean again, right? Those big Ottawa Toronto games when both teams are important, when both teams have a chance, when both teams are playing for something. Ottawa, Montreal, whoever it is, and new ones are going to develop because, like we said, right, the it's a mosh pit, the Atlantic Division, right? So every time the Ottawa Senators play Buffalo this year, it's going to be a huge game because they're fighting for the same thing. They want the same meal, right? So somebody is going to take it and somebody's not. So the passion is going to be through the roof for, almost every game that Ottawa plays, and there's no more passionate player than Brady.
Other than maybe his brother, who we'll hear from later. But let's hear from Brady now, because he talks a little bit about Matthew Tkachuk, his brother, and the motivation he's getting from watching Matthew go on his run with the Panthers to the Stanley Cup final last season. Here's that interview with Brady Tkachuk.
Brady, thanks for joining us. So I'd ask you what's the best thing you did this summer, but I think I got the answer, right?
Yep, it was pretty easy one. So yeah, it was Matthew's playoff run. No, yeah, wedding was great. It was fun. It was a busy summer, long summer.
It was an epic wedding, I've heard as well. You want to dare to explain a little bit of it?
Yeah, no, it was dance floor was great, buzzing, late night, but didn't have much time to kind of regroup and kind of have a little debrief the next day, because then we went to Italy right after. So we had to wait about a week and a half, 2 weeks till we got to see everybody again. And but no, it was definitely memorable and had a ton of fun.
So I got to ask you, the dance floor better there or at the Elbow Room during the All-Star game?
Both very close. Elbow was definitely up there, but I think the wedding surpassed it.
The Elbow Room is...
We were talking outside, the most special place on earth.
It's a fantastic place. It really, and I mean, we should, just for the Elbow Room alone, there should be an event, an NHL event in South Florida every year. I'm convinced of it.
We should book it. Boom, done.
Listen, I mean, there's a lot going on here with your summer, getting married, and all that stuff. But there's also a lot that's been going on with your team, and I'm just curious, like, what's your thought now as you entered this season? Last season took another step, but it seems like you guys and you're in that mix of that division there. Buffalo in the same way, Detroit in the same way, just itching to take over some of these teams that have been there for a while. How close are you, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, every year you want to go into the year, want to win the Stanley Cup, and I don't think that changes this year. I think with our team, the belief we have, and just seeing all the guys and how good of shape and dialed in we are even before camp, it's to be honest with you, at times wish I was still there, just grinding away with the guys, but no, I think we're ready for what's to come, and we've been through a lot of lows, and we're getting to that point where we can start kind of implementing our will, and no, it's just exciting. I've never been more excited to go into a season and just seeing everybody and getting back, and hopefully it's our last long summer moving forward, but we don't want to put that external pressure or label of what we need to do this year. It's just, like you said, just keep progressing, keep moving forward, but what's great and special about our group is just the belief we already have.
The other thing that's special about your group is it's all connected for a long time. There's very few teams that I can think of in this league that have such a young core signed for 7 or 8 years going forward. Like, who your core is, and you're going to grow with them for almost the next decade now.
Yeah, no, it's definitely that stretch of years where just guys were coming in and out, and I could probably play with 120 guys my first 3-4 years in Ottawa. But now that each year going through the year, you're seeing the same guys for the next, like you said, at least 5, 6, 7 years, and it's exciting. We're able to grow together, and we've been growing together for the last couple of years, and we're slowly adding pieces to the puzzle. But yeah, it's I think what's great about our group is that we've been through the lows together, and this past year we've kind of first time in a playoff race, and working our way to get back in that position. It's just, I think all the experiences that we have gone through is going to make us better in the long run, but also each year coming with a different focus and different kind of excitement level each year.
I know you're close with Jack Hughes. He kind of went through the same thing. And he's in a position now with the Devils where their core is all together. They made that jump last year. Have you talked to him a lot about that process and what it's like and what the payoff can be?
Yeah, no, it's fortunate to have a lot of relationships with the Devils organization, with Tommy Fitzgerald being family, and Frosty, the equipment manager, who's a great family friend, and of course Jack Hughes, the whole Hughes family. So there's a lot of connections there, and of course seeing a lot of people have made similarities for our team to their team. But it's just for us it's and of course not in their room, New Jersey Devils room, but just the belief we have, and like you guys alluded to earlier, there's a lot of teams kind of on the up and coming, and it's about who's kind of going to take advantage of the opportunity ahead. And I think what's great about our group is I think we're ready for it, and we're ready for that next level, and whatever that may be, just whatever kind of gets thrown in our face, that we've handled enough adversity over our career so far that we'll be ready to go.
What did you learn last year by watching Matthew and having sort of a front row seat for that run, and even the ups and downs they had? Being so close to him, about the ups and downs they had during the season and how it was just get in, right? It was just get in. What did you learn from that run, from just watching your brother do it?
Yeah, I think to your point, it's just you got to get in, and you never know what can happen. So seeing that, and then just seeing Matthew take advantage of the opportunity that kind of laid in front of him, and how he was saying the Florida Panthers didn't have any expectations. Like, people counted us out in the Boston series, counted us out in the Toronto series, and I think they loved the undercard card or the underdog card, and just being able to prove people wrong, and just kind of going in with no expectations, be like, nobody wanted us here, nobody think we could still be here, but we're still here, so we're going to keep proving them wrong. But just to see the everyday grind of taking care of himself and making sure he's ready for the game, and just as a leader too, is just taking care of yourself, and so you're able to kind of demand it from the rest because you're doing it right and stuff like that. So it's even back in his Calgary days, seeing that playoff run and then this playoff run is just, for me individually, I think it's already helped me out tremendously, and I'm definitely ready that hopefully it'll be me in the playoffs soon.
I was going to say, you didn't physically live through it, and that's a different thing. But there has to be almost an osmosis from being in it as a family member.
Yeah, no, it's this year I tried to not ride the wave as much. I just wanted to watch him, obviously support, but the big games come down and watch. But seeing what he did created a lot of motivation for me over the summer, and see how happy he made my family, and how proud and what he did with that opportunity. It's something that for me, I want to provide to everybody around me too, and it's just created such a motivation, and just to see what he did and individually and what he did for that team, it's so honored and special for him to be my brother and be able for me to learn from him, and it was just a lot of fun, and something that I want to do for not only my family but for the city of Ottawa too.
When he was hurt and he was suiting up for that, he was getting ready, did you really help him get dressed?
I'm not gonna lie to you, it was the craziest thing I've ever kind of been a part of. I flew in just because they were down 2-1 going into Game 4, so I just flew in for the game because I wanted to see Stanley Cup final game, and he came back from the rink in the morning. I gotta be honest, it looked awful, and he's like, I gotta go take a nap. And then he calls me at 3:30. I'm downstairs. He's like, hey, can you come up here? And then we just kind of talk, and you're in the Stanley Cup final, right? Kind of slowly just mucking it up. And then he's like, all right, I need you to help me up. And I'm like, you're joking. He's like, no, I legit can't get out of bed. And he's like, I just sneezed and I thought I died. So he's like, was going through some serious pain, and just to kind of see him being able to find a way to just play in that game and have the mindset is, I'm going to treat this as my last game, do whatever it takes, and try to get a win and put ourselves in a better position going into Game 5. I was so proud of him, and going into that game, I was a little nervous for him. Just didn't want him to get more hurt and severely hurt, but the way he played and tried to work around it. It's not many people can do, especially with the pain level that he was having.
It's got to be unbelievably difficult, right? Because there's two levels. There's the hockey player level that you guys have grown up your whole life, where you admire people who play hurt. Like, that's a characteristic that you embrace. And it's your brother. Like, and he's in a bad way, and he's putting himself out there. Like, it has to be almost a war, right, inside of you at the time?
Yeah, no, it was, of course, I was super proud of him just sacrificing himself just to try to get the job done for his teammates in the city. And then when he couldn't play Game 5, just to see kind of like how it was, breaking news, and it was, and all that stuff, just to see kind of how people are like, oh, that's a huge loss, and just recognized how important and impactful he was just on a day-to-day basis, and it just shows how special he is as a player, as a person, a leader, and how anybody would be lucky to have him on his team.
But you could beat him up, right?
Oh, still always will be, and he knows it. But I will say he's very good at getting under the skin, so he's still way better than me than that.
We just had Robert Thomas in here a little while ago. He said that you guys introduced him to boxing this summer. You're all boxing training, and of course the conversation came to who would win. He didn't even hesitate. You.
Yeah. Rob and I did a little boxing this year, and I think it was his first time this summer, and he's got the boxing addiction right now. So he looks good too, though. So I've been saying, like, you've been doing all this training, you better drop the mitts this year, because you can't go your whole career without a fight.
I mean, okay, there's a lot here to unpack, but boxing training for a hockey player. I mean, there's people who make the jokes, the obvious jokes, but boxing training for a hockey player, what's the benefit?
For me, it's Heath and at the St. Louis Boxing Club in St. Louis. He's so positive and great at what he does that it's a great workout, great conditioning, sweat, but it's also just kind of the hand-eye. And for me, the long summer, I missed just hitting people in general, kind of just missed the intensity of kind of in the battle and the grind, and that's why I enjoy it. But it's kind of a family affair. My parents do it. My sister does it. We're still trying to get Matthew, but he comes up with an excuse each time. But no, Robbie started joining, and I think each player kind of should have a little boxing background just to protect themselves, especially. But I mean, I think it's a way better workout than hopping on the bike.
There was actually a thing this weekend of football. I don't remember who the player was. He was a defensive lineman, and he had done the same thing. I think it was Micah Parsons. He had done the same thing because guys were always getting their hands on him and being able to tug at him, and it was almost what you said. But for you, I would think it's hand-eye in front of the net. Like, we think about it as a power thing, but it's almost a finesse thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to be, the power of punches, but it's also the quickness and speed and different punches. So I think it works hand strength. If, of course, block or anything like that in a fight, it just protects your hands, but just the overall comfortability that able to protect yourself and protect your teammates if need be. But what I like, just it's way better than hopping on the bike, treadmill, all this other boring conditioning stuff that we have to do. So it's just a little taste. And of course, Heath, our trainer, is an awesome guy too, who really helps us out.
Is this a second career for you?
I don't want to really get punched, so no, I think I'm good with just doing the punching, but I wouldn't want to receive any.
All right, I asked Matthew this too. I'm going to ask you two questions. What is he better at than you are?
I think with Matthew, he's, definitely more creative, finesse. I think he's the smartest player in the NHL. His passing ability, his just how he sees the game. I don't think anybody's really up there with how he sees it, and I think he's one of the best players in the NHL. I think everybody's kind of finally starting to believe what I've believed from day one, that he's just such an impact and just so good at what he does. And I think he's now starting to get away from that rat card and like the getting under the skin, because he's way better than that. He's just so impactful and just so good at what he does.
How about off the ice? Is he better than you at anything?
He's just so dialed in. I'm trying to think of something that he's significantly better at. He's a good planner. I let him usually plan car situations, all that, to workouts and all that. So I got to follow his lead
All
in
right.
that aspect, but I'll give him that.
All right. What about you? What are you better at on and off the ice than him?
On ice, I don't know, just probably more powerful, better skater, but I don't know. It just everything I do, I just want to emulate him and emulate his game, and if I can, watch him, learn from him, and the way he makes plays, sees the game, and feel like I'm starting to get there, but there's still a lot of ways to go. But it's a perfect person to look up to for on the ice, off the ice. I'm going to say I'm a better driver than him. He's a terrible driver.
This year, we doing this in Vegas. Next year, Elbow Room.
Sign me up.
All right. I'm in. Thanks for joining us, Brady.
Thank you, guys.
Sean, Brady delivered. It's up to Matthew to deliver next. The audience will hear that one shortly. So we thank Brady Tkachuk. That was at the NHL Player Media Tour in Las Vegas before training camps began, as is the interview that you'll hear shortly with Matthew Tkachuk from the Florida Panthers. Same thing at the NHL Player Media Tour in Las Vegas before camps opened. Sidney Crosby had some interesting things to say about Connor McDavid. Listen, we all know how good Connor McDavid is. He had 153 points last season. Crosby thinks he can get 170, if not more. Thinks he's that good. Is Connor McDavid going to get 170 points at any point in his career, let alone maybe this season?
I don't know if he is, but he's the player that has a shot. And I think it's brilliant by Sid, right? Like Sid's kind of, I don't matter anymore. Here's the new guy. He's going to score all the points. Like, forget about me. I'm just over here doing my thing. No pressure. So put all the pressure on somebody else. But if there's anybody that can do it, it's Connor McDavid. But I don't know, man. Like, you think about everything that went right for him last year, and he got to 153. Like, to add 17 more points to that, to score 2 points a game and play all 82 games, that's rough.
By the way, Sid has no pressure on him. Sean, he has no pressure on him. 3-time Stanley Cup champion. It's on the back nine. Everybody knows that. He's a terrific player. We know the exact effort he's going to give night after night after night. He has no pressure on him.
So you've never met Sid, then, is what you're telling me?
No. He has no pressure on him. He puts pressure on himself.
There's plenty of pressure on Sid.
Nah,
That window's closing fast.
there it is. It is, but he's won. McDavid is not. So that's the key thing here, right? 170 is a lot. I agree with you. It's a lot to ask for. If you look at this, right? The last player to top 170, to get to 170 or more, was Mario Lemieux in 88-89. They hit 199 points. Different game, right? Different game. The last to top 160 was also Mario Lemieux, who had 161 in 1992-93. We're talking now more than 30 years at this point, once this season is done, okay? 13 times 160 or more has been done. 9 for Wayne Gretzky, 4 times by Mario Lemieux. Connor is the guy to do it at this stage. Maybe the next Connor is a guy to do it at the next stage. We'll see. Who knows? We'll see how that guy in Chicago, last name Bedard, develops. But it's a big ask. I mean, I am 100% on board with what you said. 17 more. He had his almost historic season last year, right? And it was 153 points. Now we're talking, like you said, adding 17 more. He's marked every night. He's got to face the best players every single night. The goaltending in the league continues to develop and become better and better and better and deeper and deeper and deeper, as we're seeing. Not everybody's playing, like very few teams now are playing a goalie 60 games a season. It's more along the lines of 50. Why is that? Well, analytics play a role in it, but also the goaltending's better. No, I don't think he gets to 170 at any point in his career. I know exactly why Sidney Crosby would say that, because if there's going to be somebody who does something like that, and why would you ever put a ceiling on what Connor McDavid can do? I'm going to do it. I'm going to say he can't get to 170.
I'm going to go even further. It'd be a disaster for the Edmonton Oilers if he scored 170 points.
Okay, you got to explain that one.
Because he needs to be a better all-around player. For them to succeed as a team, and he talked about this, right? It's not, and him and Leon Draisaitl both talked about it. They know how to beat teams. They can bludgeon teams, but they don't know how to shut games down. They go. And where do you get your points? When you go, right?
Mhm.
When it's 5-2 and you're still going and the other team's counterattacking, that's when you pile up points, right? Because they're not playing defense. But neither are you. You're not shutting the game down. You're not tightening the screws. You're not putting the game to bed. You're still playing like it's a 2-1 game. We need more goals. That's where his points come from. You look at Steve Yzerman, right? And I think to me, that's the biggest comparable right now. Steve Yzerman was Connor McDavid, and the Detroit Red Wings were not good. And then Scotty Bowman came in and said, you know what? Play a little defense. Your numbers are going to go down. The team is going to be so much better. The team turned into a dynasty. So I'm not saying that Connor McDavid would be selfish if he went for 170 points, that it wouldn't be a great thing that we would celebrate every day. There'd be coverage of it on NHL.com every day. But I think for the Edmonton Oilers as a team, fewer points and more attention to detail would serve them better than a race for 170.
Well said. You're right. Can't argue with anything you just said there, because you're right. A better all around McDavid, a better all around Draisaitl is a better all around Edmonton Oilers team. I'll also say this: better goaltending will help. Number one, it's not been good, or at least not good enough. And some of the guys on the team have to actually stop watching guys like McDavid and Draisaitl. Stop relying on McDavid and Draisaitl to do it all the time, and start taking ownership of it. I think you saw Zach Hyman does that. I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins did it in the regular season. But you got to stop watching. You got to stop hoping that, or hope is a bad word. You have to stop waiting for McDavid and Draisaitl to take over the game. And you know what? Take it over yourself. Do your thing, right? Make them ride shotgun with you every once in a while. And that also makes the Edmonton Oilers a better team. Also, it makes McDavid and Draisaitl realize they don't always have to be the guys that do it. And if they don't always have to be the guys that do it, I think that in turn will also help make them better overall players, a better defensive player, better in the neutral zone, things along that. And that ability, like you talked about, to shut down a 2-1 game, to shut down a 3-2 game, play for that, control that 1-goal lead, get the empty net goal when you can to win the games. Those are the games they have to learn how to win. As Draisaitl said it, we know how to win. We know how to blow out teams, right? We have to learn how to win those other games, how to not lose those games. And you're right. I think what you said is 100% right. They got to be better overall, but better goaltending. And that's the thing that when Yzerman went down, when his point production started to go down and Scotty Bowman came in and said, play defense, what did they have to? They had great defense. They had forwards that were able to take ownership of it too, and be electrifying when they could be, but also really lock it down. And they had good goaltending. But
it all fed off of Stevie Y making the sacrifices that he made. He could have been one of the top point producers ever in this game. He was on track to do that. The other guy I think about it, and it's completely different, is Scott Stevens. When Scott Stevens came to the Devils, he was a point producing defenseman. And Jacques Lemaire said, listen, if you want points, go get points. We'll never win. You want to win, you do what I tell you. You play the way I ask you to play. Your points are going to go down. You're going to score 40 points a year instead of 80. But you're going to have this on your finger when it's all done, this bright, shiny bauble. And then Jacques took out all the ones he has and said, pick whichever one you want. You can have it, because that's what you need to do. And he did it. And they were right. They won 3 championships. They could have, should have won more, but they were always there. And it was because players like Scott Stevens and Scott Niedermayer changed their games from offense to more defense, right? Stéphane Richer, all of them. That's what Connor has to do. And it's not sexy. Points are sexy. We're talking about Connor McDavid because he can score 170 points and he's at a class that nobody else is. But what has it done for them?
It's gotten him headlines. It's gotten him Hart trophies and done those things, but he knows that's not
enough.
But
I said, what has it done for them?
That's it. It's gotten their player Hart trophies. It's gotten their player headlines. It hasn't gotten the Edmonton Oilers where they think that they're able to go, where they think they're capable of going, where they want to get to, and they think they can do it as soon as this season. Listen, we'll see. I think you brought up a good point that it might not be good for them if we're talking about a race for 170 or a race even for 160. But we'll see where that goes. Brady Tkachuk we talked with him earlier. Matthew Tkachuk, who puts up 100 points, but plays that type of game that that snarl in his game and plays the whole game, the whole ice. He also spoke with us at the NHL Player Media Tour. The Florida Panthers forward, who's in the same division as his brother, will be battling for the playoffs with his brother. He had a few things to say about his brother as well. Here's that interview with Matthew Tkachuk.
Matthew, thanks so much for joining us. Let's get the hard news out of the way. How are you feeling? Are you ready to go?
I am. I'm feeling great. It's been a very short summer, the way I want it to be every year going forward. But in a weird way, the worst timing for the injury, obviously Stanley Cup final, but in a weird way, I had time after where I wasn't missing, X amount of months of game action. So I had the summer to get ready and definitely improved on some things that with the injury, it allowed me to, work on some other parts of, fitness and condition and everything that is in the best form right now possible. And then just improving on some strength stuff before the season will be my goal.
Injuries are such a part of the game, but some are more scary than others. And with the type of game you play, was there any sort of nervousness about, this possibly limiting you going forward?
No, not going forward. Just at the time, there's all the, not that it's, I'll try to keep it short, but there's all the blood vessels and all this stuff. That was probably the scary part at the time, which was the most concerning part in the health at the time. But yeah, right now it's all good.
How painful was that? I remember watching you walk into the locker room after that game, and it was like you could barely move. Yet you were there. You were doing it. You were doing it. How much pain were you in? Can you describe it?
I think I realized I was in the most pain when we won that game 3. I missed a big portion of it. Came back. We won it in overtime. And after the game, I'm walking around, and normally you've got the high spirits and. After the game, after especially a win in playoffs, it doesn't matter what you're going through, you're on top of the world. And I was pumped, but I still knew that, half my body felt like it was out here. So I knew something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was at the time and did all my tests the next day. And then it came back and, basically just with doctor's orders was given the opportunity to basically go out there and do everything I could to play just one game. So did it, and the rest is that.
After having been through it, are you amazed that you finished that game and played another game, considering the condition that you found yourself to be in?
No, I would have done it all over again if I had the chance to.
But you're ready to start camp?
Yep, I'll be ready. Yep.
So camp starts soon, and the Panthers are coming off of this run to the Stanley Cup final that you guys may have seen coming, but nobody else really in the hockey world could see coming. You got a lot of injuries off of it. You pay a price for a run like that. You say you're ready to go. There's other guys. Are they questionable? They're ready to go, whatnot. There's been changes. What do you make of your team right now, especially the experience that you gained off of that run, but with everything that you've gone through to have it, too?
Yeah, I'm excited. Obviously, missing guys till around Christmas, I'm sure, will be a tough task with 2 very important D. I think everybody knows about that. I just think this year our team has way more depth in the sense of last year we ran with 12 forwards and 6 D, and pretty much one goalie, or I guess, and then in the playoffs it was Bob going the whole way. But we had Nider for a bit, and then he was out, and then the Lion King came in and played his ass off, and so we really let's call it. We had 2 goalies, 6 D, and 12 forwards that pretty much played the whole year. So depth was something that we didn't have a lot of last year, but this year there's seeing it in practice already, or in these these captain skates. The competition's going to be great this year. So there's going to be guys that might not be playing every night that are legit NHLers on other teams and impactful guys. So I think that's going to be great for us. And when we get the guys back, hopefully we're in a good spot and can do what we did last year. Our goal, everybody says you got to build off of last year. And how do you build off of last year? Well, if we build off of last year, we're winning it all. But I'm sure every team's saying that. We just got to make the playoffs. That's our goal every year.
And last year was so much about learning a new system, learning to play quote unquote playoff style hockey, and it all came to pay off when you got to the playoffs. Now you don't have to learn any of that. You've learned those lessons. Is there a sense of going into this season with a comfort level that maybe you didn't have last year?
Yes and no. Last year we were very confident going in because we knew we had a great team. We got off to a really good start, like 5 games in. Couldn't have asked for a better start, and then it started to get away from us. And then in January we're below 500. Like, this is behind the 8 ball. Like, you can only imagine. So, a good start. Everybody says it. We have to have it. Just want to be in the mix. We don't want to be behind it chasing. We just want to be in that mix the whole year and ultimately be in a playoff spot at the end.
And you guys had the experience of being behind it and chasing it. And you realize how hard it is, right?
Yeah, it sucks.
It sucks, right? It's really hard to do. And we always talk about, the start, the first month. It's a very important thing, that Thanksgiving date or whatever, that people always point at. You guys kind of defied those odds a little bit. But it's hard to do it again, right? And is that another one of those motivations to be at your best when right from the start? That doing it again like that might not happen.
No, I know, and we knew once we got into a playoff spot. Like, the best part is, and I've been on teams that have won your division. I've been 7th and 8th seed. I've been kind of those two ends of the spectrum when it comes to playoffs. And best part is when you make playoffs, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it all starts over. So even if we have a season that the Boston Bruins have, like, it doesn't matter. Like, you got to be playing good hockey when you get there, and we were lucky to be playing our best hockey going into playoffs last year. But we don't need to put ourselves through playoff hockey starting in January 1st. We just need to be playing well the whole year.
Do things feel different in Florida now after what happened last year?
Yes, very different. A lot more buzz. There's a lot of buzz around every sports team. It's turning into like a sports crazy town, and that makes it fun. Messi coming in makes it that much more buzz. The past few years, the Dolphins have been great, and what us and the Heat did last year really gained a lot of traction for us as a hockey team. So it's been cool.
Have you seen Messi yet?
I have not. No, he's been when I got there, he's been out doing his national team stuff.
Yeah.
For the Panthers, for you to see what the market could be, what did the All-Star game mean for that?
I think the All-Star was a good jump start because we weren't necessarily doing as well as a team at that point, but it kind of started to create a little bit of buzz. It showed top players what an unbelievable place Florida is to play in, which I thought was really cool. And just kind of started to create buzz around the town, which led into a great final stretch and into the playoffs. And then once the playoffs started, it turned crazy. Beating Boston took that other step where now everybody knows what's going on. And then Toronto comes to town, and everybody in Florida, most of Florida, hates Toronto. So we had that buzz going, and then all of a sudden you're in the Eastern Conference Final, and everybody's tuning in. So really cool.
So we've talked enough hockey, and I know you had a lot of rehabilitation to do this summer, but I need to know what the summer at Tkachuk was like. What'd you do that was good? What'd you do that was fun?
Yep. So I season ended, went to Nashville for the awards.
Quiet time there.
A lot of just sitting in the hotel room doing nothing.
Same.
Went to my brother's bachelor party in Miami. That took a few years off my life, and then I had 4 weddings in the next month. So once that ended, I had a little trip to Montana in August. But yeah, it was a lot of weddings and bachelor parties, and but for the last month, I really haven't done too much.
We've seen some highlights from the weddings.
Mm-hmm.
Do you sometimes wish there was no social media?
I wish every day there was no social media yet, but I don't know if I don't know where people find this stuff, but yeah, our family likes to have a good time at that stuff, enjoy ourselves, but yeah, it's unfortunate. Sometimes it gets out there.
All right, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you this. This is on my list, actually, here on my piece of paper. What is Brady better at than you?
Well, on the ice, from what I've seen the last few years, he's has a way better shot.
What about off the ice?
Off the ice, well, we just played video games. He's way better at that, but he can have that. That's I'm okay with that. He's probably like an overall genuinely better person than me. I'm more of like a ball buster than he is, and more of an instigator. But he's I don't know, probably overall just a genuinely nicer human being. But that's I'll work on that.
What? I think you've been quite kind to us
I
on this.
appreciate it. Thank you.
What are you better at than him, both on and off?
I don't know if I'm much better on ice stuff than him anymore. But even though like I haven't played golf all summer, it's like 2 weeks ago, like I still kick his ass when we play. Like, and with him playing for months and me just playing for my first round, like I still get him. I don't know how that makes sense.
Do you, obviously you have a competition, but is there a genuine pride in your brother and what he accomplishes? And does
Yeah.
it go both ways?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Yeah, we're each other's biggest fans when we play against each other now, especially same division. We have to beat each other. Our teams have to win, and it creates that healthy. When we're playing against each other, wanting to win, but when we're watching each other on TV in the other games, obviously rooting for each other individually. So it's a very great relationship we have.
All right, that's enough for you two. What's Dad better at?
Chirping. I don't know. He's just probably the wittiest human being I've ever met in my life. So he can hold court with the best of them. I don't know. I don't know what he's better at. He's just a funnier guy than us. And hanging around him, we think that we can become as witty as him, but I don't think that'll ever happen.
Dad can tell a story or two.
He can, yes. He knows how to bring a room to quiet place and just listen to him BS. So it's pretty good.
Last one. I mean, just the idea here. We're talking about you, your brother, your dad. It's almost like you guys have become the first family of hockey. Is it kind of cool?
I wouldn't go that far, but it's been pretty cool as of late, especially to see. Obviously, my dad had this unbelievable career that almost goes. Some of the things that he did in his career almost are underappreciated and underrated. So I think it's kind of cool that with my brother and I playing now and becoming maybe bigger names, he gets brought back and he gets brought back more. And I think people realize more now through us, like how great he was. So I think that's pretty cool and gives my dad a lot of credit, which he deserves.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Good luck this season.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Well, of course, we have to thank Matthew. We thank Brady, Sean. We got to thank Matthew for joining us. Again, that was at the NHL's Player Media Tour. So the Kachucks were all over this At the Rink podcast. We talked a lot of Ottawa before. I mean, we've talked some Panthers in the past few weeks on this because we also had Alexander Barkov on. Where do you think the Panthers are at? I mean, look, right now, Las Vegas, people who make these odds in Las Vegas have them at over under 99.5 points this season. I'm taking the under. They had 91 last year and barely got in the playoffs. Obviously, they went on a cup run. I mean, I don't think they get to 100 points this season. They're not going to have Montour or Ekblad until mid-December. They only have 2 of their top 6D are returning to be ready for opening night, and that's assuming Gustav Forsling and Josh Mahura stay healthy throughout training camp.
I think it's going to be a tough go. I think Paul Maurice would take 99 points right now if you offered it to him. They're going to be in it all year, like fighting for everything, because they were a 90-point team last year and they had to get hot at the end, and people forget they had to have Pittsburgh not be hot in order for them to get in. I mean, it was a crazy turn of events for them to even get in, and then upset the Boston Bruins, upset the Toronto Maple Leafs, beat Carolina in 4 one-goal games in one of the craziest 4-game series I've ever seen, and then just not be in the same class, unfortunately, and be way too hurt, including Matthew. By the way, some of the details that Matthew gave in that interview about his injury and the suffering that he was going through, to me, it still amazes me that he played at all after he took that hit and the damage that it caused. Just a complete gamer. And that's what gives me hope with Florida, is that people like Brady does, other people will feed off of Matthews' determination and leadership and everything else. And they have a better understanding of what Paul wants to do now. And that's certainly going to help. But I think people are discounting the absence of Montour and Ekblad and what that's going to mean to the team. You know, Oliver Ekman-Larsson's going to take over on the power play, and that's all fine and well. And he looked good in his first preseason game doing it. But those are two really special players on the back end.
Listen, I mean, we're not just talking about Ekblad and Montour, who should be back with the Panthers at some point this season. The likelihood is in December at some point. You're talking about not having Radko Gudas anymore, too, Sean. I mean, he goes to the Anaheim Ducks, and we're going to talk Ducks here in a second, but he goes to the Anaheim Ducks. I mean, that's a huge loss. I mean, Radko Gudas is the guy that, you know, he'd be the one to lay the big hit. He'd be the one that everybody's a little scared of when he gets on the ice. You know, he plays a strong game. Not having him as well. And Mark Stahl was a steadying presence. Mark Stahl was a steady defender, always found his way into the lineup. He's with the Philadelphia Flyers now. It's a lot to make up on the back end with the Panthers. But you know what a cool story? And you, listen, I'm going to give you some credit here, okay? Because right at the top of this show, I was saying, let's fast forward. Let's go. Let's fast forward to the regular season. And I still want to do that. But you said in the next 2 weeks, there'll be some cool stories that come out. There's a cool one tonight, Wednesday night in Carolina. Skylar Brendamore, yes, son of Rod Brendamore, is playing for the Florida Panthers against the Carolina Hurricanes in a preseason game. Skylar Brendamore in 2017 was drafted in the 6th round, I believe it was, by the Edmonton Oilers. He's no longer with them. He went to Quinnipiac. He won a national championship at Quinnipiac. He signed a 2-year AHL deal with the Charlotte Checkers, who are Florida's AHL team right now. And tonight, Wednesday night, he gets a chance to play at home in Raleigh against his dad and his dad's team with the Florida Panthers. That's the pretty cool story that you were talking about.
Rod's been an unabashed supporter, you know, days off, even during playoffs, to go see his son play. I think he saw him win the championship, if I'm not mistaken, at QU. So, you know, they are great stories, and they happen all the time. You just have to keep your eyes open. Look, I'll tell you another one or two that happened this week and that we should be celebrating a lot more than we did. And they both involve coaches as well. Seattle played against Calgary on Monday night. Jessica Campbell was on the bench. She's a coach with the AHL team, their AHL team. I believe she's the first coach to stand on an NHL bench during an exhibition game, although Corey Chevrolet, if I'm saying her last name correctly, did it the day before for the Penguins, but she was just a guest instructor. She's going to coach in the PHWL this year. Great stories. I think Jessica Campbell is a fantastic story. And the fact that the Seattle Kraken recognized what she's done, you know, they were an elite team in the AHL last year, and she was a huge part of it. And to reward her by putting her on a bench with Dan Bilesma, they were a split squad. Half the team was in Calgary, half the team was in Seattle. She coached in Seattle. Just a monumentous moment. And that's what the preseason's about. You know, we look at the big picture and we think about all the things that we talk about on here, but there's little moments that happen to people who've spent their whole life in hockey. And it might be the only time they ever see the NHL ice, the only time they ever referee an NHL game, the only time they ever coach, whatever it might be. And they're amazing. And if you keep your eyes open and you watch, like, it's what sport's about.
Jessica Campbell is a terrific story. Now is a terrific story. She might be behind the bench of an NHL team eventually. Maybe she continues to break that ground, break those barriers, if you will. Another cool one Monday night was Sean Couturier from the Philadelphia Flyers. Just played his first game in 20 months. He had 2 back surgeries between then and now. He hadn't played since December 18th, 2021. He shows up on the ice for the Flyers in a 6-0 loss to the Devils on Monday, but that's not the point. The fact is that he played 2 back surgeries later. He's on the ice playing. He's a key part of it for the Flyers. They're in a rebuild. They need their veteran leadership, and Sean Couturier is graduated to that. He is a veteran leader on that team. They need Cam Atkinson too. He was a late scratch for that game. He didn't play at all last season either. So a little bit of an interesting storyline going on with the Philadelphia Flyers as well. But listen, another interesting storyline is what's happening in Anaheim. And I had a question in the mailbag, Sean, this week. It's up on NHL.com now, you know, about Leo Carlsson and the Anaheim Ducks. And if I think he's going to play the full season in Anaheim, we'll see. I mean, Leo Carlsson has a lot of work to do. He's a number 2 pick in the draft this year, 2023 draft. He's got a lot of work to do. You can read my answer there, but the bigger question is will Trevor Zegras play the full season in Anaheim this year? Will Jamie Drysdale play the full season in Anaheim. You referenced Shane Pinto back earlier in this episode when we were talking about the Ottawa Senators as one of three restricted free agents who remain unsigned. The other two are in Anaheim that you're talking about. Trevor Zegras, who has become sort of a face of the franchise type player, and Jamie Drysdale, who's one of the better young defensemen in the league, who's still got so much to prove, both unsigned. And according to reports, they're ready to go with a 3-year contract for both of them, but it's apparently the money, and there's a big disconnect there with the money for those guys. A tangible gap is the reporting from The Athletic, between the Ducks and Zegras especially, and I guess Drysdale too. And I'm just trying to figure out, like, I understand Pat Verbeek's playing a hardline approach here, right? I get it. And honestly, what's Trevor Zegras's? He doesn't really have much to play on here unless there's a offer sheet out there, which there clearly is not. So you're waiting and waiting, but they got a new coach. They got a team that wants to take that next step in its rebuild this year. And their top center right now is sitting on the sidelines, and he's not learning the system. He's not part of it. That's going to be a real rough go for the Ducks if they can't get Zegras and Drysdale, those two guys, in camp.
Yeah, but they have to do it on their terms. Everybody's like, why are you not just giving Trevor Zegras what he wants, right? Like, he's the face of your franchise. You need him in camp. You need this, you need that. If you're going to give Trevor Zegras at 22 a 3-year deal, what is he when he's done with that deal?
25. He's got a lot of contract left.
He's still an RFA.
Yep.
With arbitration rights. So you give him a big deal right now, 3 years, he's 25, you owe him the moon if he continues on the way he's going, right? Like, just from arbitration, not even you want to sit down and you want to hammer out a new contract. Like, there's no way. The more money you give him now, the more you're going to pay him later. So why wouldn't you try and get this player who you hold every right against? From the time he's 27 until he retires at 40, he has his team at his beck and call. But right now, he doesn't. Right now, under the system that Pat Verbeek is being told to play under, and that he experienced as a player, he holds the hammer. Use it. Why give away your leverage?
And that's where the standstill is, right? That's got to be it. Because if you're Trevor Zegras, you're also looking at it and going, I know I'm valuable to this team. And yeah, if I'm ready to sign a 3-year deal by the time I'm 25, I'm still an RFA with arb rights, and I got a lot of things going my way at that point. Cap's going to be way up at that point too, and I'm going to really cash in then too. And maybe at that point I'll let them buy some UFA years from me, but they're going to have to pay for it. So he's looking at it that way as well. And his hammer is just not to sign, not to be in camp. In a way, it doesn't really impact the Ducks all that much because nobody's really expecting the Anaheim Ducks to be a playoff team or to be a contender this year. They're very much in a rebuilding phase and a young phase. And Zegras is a big part of that. But if you're Trevor Zegras, if you're Jamie Drysdale, you're looking at it and saying, I know how valuable I am to this team, and I want to be paid my value to this team, and I want to be set up to keep getting my value to this team if I'm going to continue on the trajectory I'm on right now. And if you're Pat Verbeek and you're the Anaheim Ducks, you're saying, I don't want to overpay now because I'm going to overpay later. That's where you get the standstill. At some point, it'll get resolved. Will it get resolved? I mean, look, in training camp, I don't know. I was talking to Trevor Zegras. I saw him at a charity event in Connecticut last month, early August, and I talked to him about his contract, and he was hoping something was going to get done, and he's ready to go and all that stuff. We're a week into training camp. Nothing's done. If they're at that much of a standstill, there's got to be movement on both sides. And why would there be at this point? Like, why would the Ducks move? Why would Zegras move if they're going to be, if they're going to be in, locked into what they want? This could carry into the regular season. We've seen it happen before.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be on Trevor to move, right? Because that's the way the system's set up right now. The Ducks have all the leverage. He's coming off his entry-level contract. He doesn't have the rights that a veteran player has. Look, the other way you could attack this, in the way that the Ottawa Senators have attacked it and other teams, just throw an 8-year deal at his feet right now. Take him to 33. Bet on him being the player that he is. Forget the bridge deal. Say, we know who you are. Here's 8 years worth of money. we're going to overpay a little in the beginning. Hopefully we're getting a bargain at the end.
Right. And that would
Right.
be the Ducks. That would be the Ducks. It would take them to 30. That would be the Ducks betting on Zegras for the long term. But Zegras, if he's a confident player. He's confident in himself. I would imagine he wants to bet on himself more than allowing the Ducks to bet on him. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. But I want you to answer the question before we get out of here, Sean. Leo Carlsson, does he play the full season with the Anaheim Ducks this season?
From the conversation that we just had, I'm going to say no. He can go to the AHL, which I think is really important. If you're not a contending team, why feed your kids to the wolves, right? Let them play at the AHL level. It's a great league. Guys learn so much there. I never have an issue with over marinating your prospects. And B, you play him a full year this year. You play him more than 9 games this year. He's one step closer to being where Trevor Zegras is right now. And you don't need to rush that because you're not playing for anything. You're building for the future. You want these players to come out of contract when you're ready to contend. That's when you want to give those years away. You don't want to give them away now. You want to extend your control until you're a competitive team. So I don't know, unless Leo Carlsson comes in and he's just the best player ever, why would you do it? You can bring in another player for little money and muddle through this year and try and get better, bring in a veteran guy to help with the kids and whatever else it might be. And then, send Leo to the AHL and let him play there. And now you've bought another year of his contract.
Right. And that's the key thing. He can go to San Diego. It's not that far from Anaheim, obviously. You can quickly monitor. You can easily monitor his development down there. But it's on Leo Carlsson. I think it's a decision up to Leo Carlsson. He played his first preseason game the other night, and Greg Cronin, the first-year coach there, he was excited about what Leo Carlsson was able to do. But he also talked about this guy was drafted as a two-way defenseman. So clearly, we know he can play offense. But if he's going to live up to the billing of the two-way defenseman two-way centerman, sorry, not defenseman, if he's going to live up to the two-way player that he was drafted to be, Andrei Kopitar, Alexander Barkov, those names come up, right? He's going to have to really learn to play the other side. You might not want to learn that in the National Hockey League at the start when you're 18, 19 years old. You may want to learn that in the American Hockey League because he's also playing on a shrinking rink, right? 200 by 100, 200 by 85. He's from Sweden. Now he's got to play it a little tighter. The game happens faster. There's a lot, those are things that he's going to have to learn. So it's going to be interesting where it goes with Leo Carlsson, but way, way, way more interesting where it goes with Trevor Zegras. And I don't know that this gets resolved. And like I said before, I don't know that it gets resolved in training camp. I would not be surprised if this carried into October. And at some point, and look, deadlines push a lot of things here. We see it in this league all the time. We see it in sports all the time. Maybe the deadline of opening night pushes this, but if it doesn't, October at some point, and then you're looking at probably, like you said, Zegras moving off of his position more than the Ducks would move off of theirs.
There's no impetus for the Ducks to move off of theirs, and Travis Zegras is a hockey player. He wants to play hockey, and he only has a certain window to do it, right? And you talked about being a confident player, like, you're giving away years of games at that point, right? When you think about like Alex Ovechkin and the games that were taken away from him in his career and where he could be in some record chases if he had those years back, right? Lockout, COVID, whatever it might be. Like, it's a slightly different narrative. Players don't want to give away games ever. That's what they play for, is the games, the camaraderie in the room, all of those things. So the impetus is going to be on Trevor Zegras to move. And Paprvik knows that. He was a player. He had to do the same thing. Like, especially GMs that were players, they get it, right? Because they went through it. Billy Guerin was the same way. He went through it with his guys in Minnesota. He's like, I know what you're doing. I know what your argument is. I had the same argument. I couldn't win. You can't win either.
Yeah.
It's the way the system's set up. You'll win later. That's when you get to win. But try telling, my son's 18. If I try and tell him he can win 5 years from now instead of today, he doesn't want any part of it. He wants to win today.
Yeah. No, you're right. We'll see where it goes. It's an interesting storyline, no doubt, with the Ducks having Zegras and Jamie Drysdale. We keep talking about Zegras, but let's not forget about Jamie Drysdale either. Anyway, this was the Kachuk episode, but we did a lot more. It was more than the Kachuk episode, as it turns out. But we do thank Brady and Matthew. Those were fun interviews to do with the Kachuk brothers. Hope you enjoyed it. And Sean, next week when we talk, we'll be 1 week closer to the start of the regular season. And I'll be even more excited and want it to go even faster when we talk next week.
And I'll still be zen living in the moment.
That's what you do. All right. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the hockey.